Good morning. Welcome to Real Estate Radio Denver, the most informative hour of radio every Saturday right here on News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your host, Tom Souther. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, Real Estate Radio Denver is dedicated to building Denver's housing market. We're here to give you some good advice, help you with connecting with some true experts in that marketplace, whether you're buying or selling a home, or maybe you just need a little credit advice or talk about some refinancing. You name it. We can help you in that real estate realm. You can always give us a call. I encourage you. We'd love to connect. You can reach us on our off-air number. That's 720-515-1818, 720-515-1818. And I'd love to connect you with any of our guests or answer your questions if they're mortgage related. As you know, I'm a mortgage originator. That's what I do when I'm not on air. I'm with Citywide Home Loans, and we love to help with buyers, and we love to help you with that refinance. If you've got questions about what's going on in the market, I'd love to help you with that. So as you know, within every marketplace, there are solutions as well as just some tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted advice, and that's what you hear every Saturday right here on Real Estate Radio Denver. So today we want to talk about, help you and to understand what some of this government shutdown is doing to the mortgage and real estate industry. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the lingering flood issues. We're going to help you with maybe to understand and take some of the fear out of what lending requirements are going to do after the first of the year and how that's going to affect real estate. And then just do another market recap. What are prices doing? Are they inflated? Should you have bought in spring? Should you buy now? When's the right time? So I've got two really fantastic guests today. I want to introduce the both of them. One is Tom Gysin. Tom's a regular. He's one of my show partners. Tom is the owner and founder of Homestead Title. They do a fantastic job with your closing transaction. If you have a real estate transaction or perhaps a refinance, these guys are the best. I can't say enough about the level of experience in their shop and how great a job they do. Tom, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be back. It's been a little while. Yeah, I don't know why, but just haven't the timing hasn't worked out. But happy to be back.
Yeah, well, we've had some of your staff on, so you've been well covered. And as always, is there any kind of Homestead Title update you want to do? I'm throwing you under the bus on that. We didn't plan that.
No, you know what? Not really. It's the market has. We'll get into that a little bit more here. It's the market has definitely changed in the last 60 days or so, and so we're just dealing with the everyday changes that come our way and navigating through that. But honestly, things are going really well, and just plugging away every day.
Yeah, one of the things I also like to say about Homestead is local business gone great. There's so many giant monolithic title companies out there. You guys are a small homegrown Colorado shop, and it started in the worst possible time because you're possibly crazy, and expanding and doing really well. So that's a great local success story on a small business that started under adverse conditions.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning that because you know what, there are some big boys out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we, as you mentioned, we are Colorado grown, and everybody that works for us is here in Colorado. Everything we do stays here in Colorado, meaning we do not outsource anything in terms of title production offshore or to other states, but mostly offshore, where some other companies do that. You know what? We're just proud of doing it right each and every time, and we have some great people, and just happy to be working in the market. Absolutely.
My second guest, I have with me Allie Kronberg, who is a realtor and real estate agent with Fuller Sotheby's International Realty. It's a mouthful. Allie works out of their DTC office, and she's also a CPA. So can really help you understand what that large financial transaction that you're doing, how it's going to affect you. Allie, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
And let's jump right in. The big news this week is government shutdown, and it's affecting all of us, I think. I guess I'll start on that, and you guys can jump on in, because I think it's probably affecting my world as a lender more than anybody else. And, these are the things that you don't think about when our government, in their infinite lack of wisdom, decides to pull the plug, that it trickles down and affects your real estate transaction. So in our process, several of the things we do is we verify Social Security numbers. We verify that your tax returns are what you hand us is true and correct. And all of that verification has come to a screeching halt. So if you were in a real estate transaction that went under contract in the last couple of weeks, and those parts of your transaction have not happened, they aren't going to happen until they come back. And we don't know when that is. Do we?
No, we don't.
Allie, do you have that?
I do not know.
That crystal ball?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't have any idea when these guys are going to come to their senses and actually do something. So, what does that mean? It means that every day mortgage companies across the country are submitting requests to verify tax returns, and they're going into a stack. So
what does your company see in this? Or what does this mean as far as, do you think this is going to build up to the point where a normal verification might have taken, I don't even know what it normally took, 3-4 days, 2 days?
Yeah, 48 hours usually.
Is that going to get to something where it's going to be 20-day turnaround because they're just stacked up?
Well, here's how I do the math. I don't think the real estate business is stopping because the government is slowing down or doing whatever they're doing. So I just see this queue of requests increasing daily. That activity is probably not decreasing. So what does that mean? Your 2-day turnaround 2 days ago is now 3. Tomorrow it's 4. The next day it's 5. And the longer we're out, you just add however long we're out to 48 hours, and that's probably how long it's going to take them to get back. I don't see them adding staff or changing what their process is. It's just going to be what it is. So if we're out for 2 weeks, I think the turn time on those documents is going to be 2 weeks. Looking at the clock, we're going to have to take a break here. So thank you for listening to Real Estate Radio Denver. We're going to come back and we're going to give you a little more information on this government shutdown and how it affects you if you're in a real estate transaction. And then we're going to talk about how the changes are going to affect you coming January 1 as well. Come on back. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Denver. I'm your host, Tom Souther, and I'm here in studio with two great guests today. I have Tom Gysin, the owner and founder of Homestead Title. Welcome back, Tom.
Think you very much.
And I have Allie Kronberg with Fuller Sotheby's International Realty. Allie is a real estate agent. I think her main focus, if she had her druthers, would be DTC area, Inglewood, Greenwood Village, Cherry Hills. You do a lot of work there.
That's right.
Live in that area.
That's my
not
bread
too
and
much
butter.
Personal information. We're not going to give you your address. But that's your bread and butter areas, and you know those areas really, really well. You know what the schools are like. You know intimately how those neighborhoods work. Allie's also a CPA, which adds a great depth to her ability to help you with that probably largest transaction you're going to have in your lifetime. And we're filling you in on what's going on with this government shutdown and how does it affect your real estate transaction. And it's interesting because you don't really think about what Washington's doing and how does it affect my life. And it's affecting real estate transactions in a big, big way because I will tell you, almost all lenders are in this same boat where if they cannot get the verifications of your tax returns, they cannot get the verifications of your Social Security number, you're not closing. And that means...
Because that's a huge part for them, for saleability, right?
Saleability, fraud. Used to be in the good old days, it was not that difficult to give somebody a fraudulent tax return. That's a horrible thing in our industry, and over the last 10 years, they've weeded that out and made it almost impossible for that to happen. And one of those steps in ensuring the accuracy of our files is to do these verifications. And until the IRS is back in business, which some of us hope is never, but some of us hope that we want to close a real estate transaction again.
On the side of the verification of tax returns, we want them back in business, right?
That just means that we go into a holding pattern until that happens again. So, Allie, we were talking on the break about what's that mean in your real estate transaction? To me, it's additional time. But if you're already under contract, perhaps.
If we're already under contract, it means we may have to write extensions in because we don't know when the government's coming back. And until they do, we don't know when these deals are going to close. Right. If you're not under contract and you're writing an offer, we need to take extra time into account at this point.
Right, and it depends on where you are in your process with your lender. If you're under contract and you're in a mortgage transaction right now, I would ask some specific questions of your lender. Has my 4506 tax verification transcripts been received so that we can move forward? If they haven't, you're potentially in a holding pattern and need to talk about extensions. So on the seller side, Allie, the seller doesn't necessarily have to extend that contract, do they?
With transactions that are currently under contract, they don't. The seller has the right to say, we agreed to this close date and you need to perform. Whether or not the buyer can get lending is a different story, but, they can either close on time or, it sort of gives the seller an out. I mean, they could say, we're not going to extend, and they could go out and find another buyer that can do a deal. And
it wouldn't necessarily put their earnest money at risk.
It wouldn't necessarily.
You wouldn't be able to meet.
That's
right. A loan condition deadline in that contract.
That's right.
That we would not perform on, and that would be the out for the buyer.
So the buyer would be out and would
earnest money
be
back.
Protected from that standpoint, but they would not have any way of forcing the seller to complete the transaction.
But I'm not a contract expert on that, but they would have to do that before the loan.
Before the deadline.
The loan commitment deadline.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. That's a key thing there would be is if you're in the middle of a
these deadlines.
Deal.
Yeah, absolutely. These deadlines are so important, and it's interesting how many people write offers and submit contracts and really think that their biggest deadlines are really the inspection and the appraisal. But there's so many deadlines in there, and people don't realize the importance of each and every one of these, because if something doesn't transact by that date, the whole deal changes.
And that loan condition deadline is one of those.
It is one of those key dates
that we track in our mortgage practice to make sure that our customers' earnest money is not at risk.
That's absolutely right.
And in this situation with this government shutdown, again, most lenders are going to be in this same boat. There's a few that may work around and take the risk, which is substantial, that they don't have a fraudulent file or what have you. But because they have no way of knowing that at this point, they're taking it on faith that the tax return that you gave to them for underwriting is correct.
But that's
true and correct. That's
going to be few and far between lenders that are going to do that.
Very few and far between, quite honestly. So I think 99% of the lending world is going to be in this same boat.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing throughout the industry. And I know that's the fact with, almost all of the major investors who purchase mortgages from originating companies. So this is a big deal.
How does that process work? Is it an electronic submission that the lender does to request the 4506?
Yes, but I believe those are all kind of individually hand verified to make sure that there's an exact match of address that matches what your tax return was filed, and social security numbers and names and et cetera.
Well, to your point,
so
you were talking
who actually looks at each one of those requests.
But on the submission side, which is where I was thinking about this, is that from a lender standpoint, you're submitting it electronically.
Yes.
And if it's going to, let's say, build up in a queue while the government is shut down,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Hypothetically, it's important to make sure it gets submitted.
Yes.
Right? So you should certainly be asking your lender, hey, by the way, if I'm in the process right now,
get this
submit
in the queue.
It, right?
Yeah.
Get
that in the queue so that when they do come back online, you're not
3 weeks down. Exactly right.
Beginning or the middle of the line.
Yeah.
So that's a very big advice. Move forward with your transaction. Everything's going to come back when it comes back, and we can't control how long that turn time is going to be when it does happen. But if we know that, Allie, what would be your advice to someone who is writing a contract?
If we're writing a contract now, I would advise my buyers to make their deadlines far enough out that we can, try to buffer through this. Maybe typically, I'm writing 30 and 45-day contracts. I might suggest that we're writing 45 and 60-day contracts.
Would you mention this in the contract, just basically the issue we're talking about?
I might make a note in there that if I'm working with the buyer in order to protect them, I might just write it in the additional provisions portion just to say, should there be any problem with processing the loan due to the government shutdown, the 4506 form specifically, what have you, that, we're going to extend and get the seller to agree to that up front, as opposed to trying to go back and try to get this, these that are in process now where we're asking the seller for an extension, that's where the seller has some leeway. So I'm going to try to, get all this stuff taken care of up front if I'm working a buyer now and just going under contract.
And most sellers, I'm going to assume, are going to be in that same boat, because most sellers are as soon as they get their house sold or somewhere in this process, they're looking for their next one.
That's right.
And they're probably going to be typically going to be in a mortgage transaction themselves. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be in that same boat. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's good advice, right. But that's we don't. These are all the little subtle ramifications that we don't really think about.
Absolutely, and it's good to negotiate as much of the stuff up front in the initial contract as you possibly can, as opposed to getting yourself under contract and being halfway through, and then you're trying to negotiate these points one side to the other, and these transactions get so emotional, and maybe somebody's steamed up now from the way the inspection went, or this, that, or the other. Exactly. So then all these other factors. So just do it up front is my advice, and just try to hammer it out if you can, because we don't know how long this shutdown's going to be, and we just need to account for it up front.
Tom, refinances, these are going to be affected the same exact way.
Exact same.
Right?
Yeah.
So what about lock extensions that people are facing right now due to this non-verification? Has that come up yet?
It has not. Although
but it will.
We have, throughout my office, have had significant conversations about what's the right lock term. I don't know. Do these guys stick in this hold pattern and dig their heels in and we're out for 30 days? If that happens, we're in serious trouble with a lot of any refinances that are happening if they're locked already.
Yeah, and I can tell you the government's not going to come and make up the cost difference, right, for a rate lock. So that's going to fall either on the mortgage company or the borrower.
Or the borrower.
Yeah, or somewhere in between.
And quite honestly, with the way the mortgage industry is regulated, it's very difficult for most mortgage companies to not pass that additional cost along to the buyer. I'll just flat honest say that's how the system works, because of how we're regulated right now with how fees are essentially mandated that we cannot change fees easily. So any additional fees typically have to be passed on to the buyer or the refinance customer, the borrower. Refinances are going to be an issue. Absolutely. If they're not locked, if they haven't gone through this verification process, we're in the same timeline limbo as we would be with the purchase.
Yeah, that's a great point. You hear some of the advertisements out there, people saying, hey, we can close
in 3 weeks.
3 weeks, et cetera. And you're going, maybe not.
No,
yeah.
Not today. I would not count on that. Again, there's exceptions to every rule, and there's probably a few lenders out there who have workarounds on this that are willing to take that big risk. I don't think there's many, and I think as this, if this extends into weeks, you're going to see those fade away. Is my prediction. That and $4 will get you a cup of coffee these days. So I don't know what that's worth.
Well.
Anyway,
now I'm scared, right?
Yeah, well, it just is what it is. I hate that term, but I use it all the time. It's just something we're going to have to deal with. I find it very interesting how this is going to affect perhaps many, many transactions nationwide.
Well, let's talk about how it's going to affect the market, right? Which will be interesting to see, right? So Allie, tell me a little bit about what the market's been doing over the last 60 days.
The market has changed significantly since the spring. In the spring, things were selling like hotcakes. You could list your house at 8 o'clock in the morning and have it sold by noon. Sometimes before.
6-7 offers, right?
6 or 7 offers, that's right. Things, changed dramatically, kind of midsummer, last 60 days or so, like you said. And, I think it's leveling out. and things are slowing down, you're not going to have the 6 or 7 offers. You're still going to get your offers. Probably not in 4 hours. It might take a few days, might take a few weeks. I think that it's just kind of stabilizing back to more of a normal pace.
Yeah, level market.
Level market. But, still, the prices, I don't see them skyrocketing since this spring. I think, again, those are leveling out. But, a lot of people ask me, they say, well, are things down? The spring was so hot. Are the prices down? Well, I think they've stabilized also. I think that we're seeing more of a level market. The inventory is back to, more of a normal level.
Reasonable levels. I'm not sure normal, but,
yes, reasonable.
Not crazy short.
That's
shortages.
Right.
Yeah. We, Tom, we have some of these research reports that we pull, and obviously it varies between segments of the city that we're talking in. But absolutely, I've been looking at these for the last 30 to 60 days. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Allie, it is definitely cooled, and there's kind of that line between the seller's market and the buyer's market. And in most areas, it's kind of hitting that kind of middle ground.
It is. I do think that it's nice for buyers. There was so much stress and heat in the spring. I say buyers, sellers too, because what was happening was these buyers would jump in 6, 7 offers. They had to be competitive. And then they'd get cold feet once they got in. They got their deal and they got in. They'd get cold feet and back out, and then the sellers were left. So, I think it's nice that a little bit of that stress has been relieved.
I think you're absolutely right. And I want to hit more on this subject as soon as we get back from the break, because we can talk all day about how this is affecting and what this government shutdown is, how that's going to affect that timeline and those numbers, because I think it's going to affect those. Anyway, you're listening to Real Estate Radio Denver here on News Talk 710 KNUS. We're going to come back with more on just how this is all affecting the market. Don't miss a minute. Come on back. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Denver. I'm your host, Tom Souther, and I'm here in studio with Allie Kronberg with Fuller Sotheby's International Realty. She's a real estate agent, realtor, and a CPA.
Hi. Yes, I am.
We were talking on break about, we'll go there in a minute. I also have Tom Gysin with me, the owner-founder of Homestead Title. And before we went on break, we're not even going to go to this topic. Before we went on break, we're filling you in on how this market has changed over the last 60 days or so, and how does that affect your ability to buy? Is the timing right? All of these issues. So let's go back there and just hit on some of those topics, because I think there's a lot of numbers and a lot of things swirling around that's affecting the market. And we listed off some of those, back to school, more inventory, all of these things.
Interest rates rising.
Interest rates, yeah. So I think we had an interesting something I wanted to go back to. You said on the break, Allie, about sitting out a bit. You've got customers who are just making offer after offer.
In the spring, when it was so competitive, people were making offer after offer, and depending upon the price point, that $200,000 to $300,000 price range.
Brutal.
It was brutal. And I had buyers, sometimes first-time home buyers, sometimes not, sometimes repeat home buyers, but still in that price point, and just getting beat out by, oftentimes it was cash offer, because it's just so hard to compete with that. And I had a few clients who would make offer after offer after offer and get beat out and beat out and beat out on, you get emotionally attached to a home. You find a home that you're willing to make an offer on. You're like, this is where I'm going to put my family. And you immediately make this emotional attachment to it. You write the offer. And after you do that 3, 4, sometimes 5 times and get beat out time and time again, it can take it can have an effect on you. And so I had buyers that would say, I'm just going to sit out for a little bit. Maybe I just need to wait for things to cool off. Maybe I just need to make a little bit more money so I can come back a little stronger and, and bump my price range a little bit or what have you. But, to your point, Tom, I think that with where we're at, I think it's a good time to get back in. We're not seeing those multiple offers. I think that the prices have stabilized. If you were sitting out for a period of time, give me a call. We'll go look. It's a great time to take a look at things and try to get your foot back in the door without the competition that you were seeing in the springtime.
Well, I think it is a great time to get back in. My message has always been now is the best time.
Absolutely.
And I think if you've been waiting, it's still the best time. I think there's going to be changes after the first of the year, which we had on our list to talk about.
That's
there's
right.
going to be, rates have settled back a little bit. Take out of the thought of this government shutdown, your agent, your great agent like Allie Kronberg will help you to figure out how to navigate through those temporary problems. But it is a good time that's not quite as competitive for the buyers right now.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think this is the time to jump back in. So in saying that, call us. You can reach me off air, 720-515-1818. I will put you together with Allie Kronberg so she can help you get back into the market, because if you've been sitting on the sideline thinking it's too hard, it's too much of an emotional drain, I've written offers and I can't find what I want. Maybe it's there now, and it's not quite as competitive. So again, 720-515-1818, 720-515-1818, and I will happily put you immediately together with Allie Kronberg with Fuller's, and she can help you find that perfect forever home for you.
Absolutely.
So if you were to advise someone with all of these changes, now is the time. But what's going on that makes today, or let's back that up. We knew prices were getting driven up in the spring because they were getting 7 and 8 offers, and they were getting these homes under contract in 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
You were seeing everybody putting up signs saying coming soon,
right,
just to build some frenzy. Is that still happening? And
we definitely still see the coming soon signs. I don't feel that the frenzy is there the way it was in the spring.
Right.
I had one client that was in a position where the family made offer after offer after offer. And we finally got the home by sort of, being a little bit aggressive and sort of pushing our way in before the showings began the next morning. And as it happened on that particular deal, the listing agent and the seller were there still doing cleanup. They were getting ready for photographs and stuff to start the showings the next day. And we were able to negotiate the deal on the driveway that evening. And we said, we got to get this done, no showings. What's it going to take? But some of that, has subsided. People are waiting until showings begin, and you're not seeing so many people list the homes saying showings begin on Saturday or what have
right.
you. People put them on the market and showings begin immediately. And so it's not the frenzy of the springtime with that.
Let's talk about pricing on homes and what you're seeing in the market, because I think everybody sees that house that's in their neighborhood that's sitting there for 30 days or 60 days or forever.
Sure.
When we're telling everybody that everything's selling immediately. My take on those situations is about price.
And a lot of times it still is. Things now, it can take 30 days. I mean, that's somewhat of an average. And
I was going to say it's actually a more normal market.
It is a more normal
Absolutely.
market. But we definitely talk about chasing the market in real estate and with our sellers and stuff. If you start too high, you're going to be chasing it down, because as things change, as people see it sit longer, buyers look at it and they say, hey, what's going on with that one? Why hasn't it sold? So if you start too high, you're always going to be chasing it down. And you're probably not going to do quite as well as if you start it at a reasonable price. Yeah, in the first place.
Well, and I don't think that's, particularly in this market, is not a great strategy to go in as a seller, go in high and expect, I'll get that one person who's willing to pay anything for the neighborhood.
Right.
I think you as an agent is way more sophisticated than that in advising your customers that no, don't buy that house. It's overpriced in the neighborhood for what
right.
you would get. There will be something that is more reasonable based on condition, based on whatever.
Sure.
All of those factors that make up what that price is. And I don't think any agent is doing their customer a service by going out high.
I don't think so either. And, ultimately, different agents work differently. I mean, when I talk with sellers, my seller sets the price. I don't set the price for them. And I give them a range and I say, here is, where we can price your home. It's going to depend on the seller's motivation. If they're not actually motivated to sell and they're just kind of like, hey, let's throw it out there and see what happens, they're going to price it high and let it sit, and maybe they don't care.
Right.
So there's different, you have to take into account also the seller's motivations for selling.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had a guy on the show one time. We talked about that 30, 60, 90-day pricing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Good.
That's right.
And absolutely. But I think, there's a point that you're just out.
Absolutely.
And I'm hearing these stories all the time of, well, this home is lovely and it's a great neighborhood, but it's $60,000 more than somebody should pay for in a price range in the $300 to $400 range.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a huge adjustment. I mean, $5,000 or $10,000, sure. I think you can make that up in demand. But
well, what's crazy is unfortunately
out of the sight.
Some people who bought 120 days ago, unfortunately, probably got caught up in with where inventory levels were, where they had to do what they did.
Right.
But probably in hindsight, probably didn't buy right.
Well, it's interesting because a little while ago, some of those weren't appraising. It depended. If they were a cash buyer and they wanted that house, and they wanted that neighborhood, and they were willing to pay it, more power to them.
Yep.
But, the appraisers were coming through and saying, hey, we're not going to let this go because we can't support this.
Yeah.
So I had that happen a few times.
Yeah. Well, I would say, all in all, the good side is interest rates are down somewhat. Inventories, what is inventory? It's definitely up.
It is. I was looking at numbers last night, and it's almost at normal.
Okay. So you've got more
close.
Inventory.
You're getting close to normal.
Yeah. Things just aren't screaming. We're in a lower season of purchasing, right? A lot of good signs if you're thinking about buying.
I think it's a great signs if you're thinking about buying. And again, I would love to put you together with Allie Kronberg to make that happen for you. If you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking, I missed it, or it was too frustrating. It's a little easier now. And, I encourage you, would you please call the show. It's off air. Leave us a message. Let me put you together with Allie at that number, 720-515-1818, 720-515-1818. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Denver. I'm Tom Souther. I am a mortgage professional, your host. I work with Citywide Home Loans, which is just a fantastic company in getting your loans done. We've been filling you in today on what the government shutdown means. How have prices changed and the market changed over the last couple of months. And it's interesting, and again, we think now's the time. Get into that market. One of the other issues we've had here in Colorado is flooding. Over the last, I think it's been 3 weeks ago now. I know my sister-in-law and her husband are still stuck up in between Estes and Loveland in their home and haven't been able to get out. They've been there 3 weeks. That road's gone. There's a lot of flooding. That's worst case scenario. Saw some pictures yesterday. The Big Thompson is pretty crazy. But what did that flood mean in our industry and to real estate transactions, to the mortgage side of things? And it's had some dramatic changes and influence.
Where is that today?
Today, what we're seeing is properties that we've closed that we're required to re-inspect, get an appraiser out there, take more pictures, make sure that there's been no damage to that home, either post-closing, which is not the time to do that because that puts us as a mortgage company, as a loan holder at that point, at extreme risk that loan is not sellable any longer to an ultimate investor. If you haven't closed and FEMA, whatever their name is, Federal Emergency Management Association, or not sure if association is the right word, but they've declared a number of counties as disaster areas due to that flooding. All of those areas are required if your appraisal was done just happens that the major rain was 9/11. So if your appraisal was done prior to 9/11 or on 9/11, we have to re-inspect that property. And, we still have loans that have not closed that we're sending out an appraiser to re-inspect.
And who pays for that?
Typically the buyer is going to pay for that reinspection.
Wait, is that another $350?
No.
More,
usually it's $100 or, I've seen them as much as $150 or $175. Depending on what kind of loan you have or are getting will determine if they need to retake interior pictures and do a more thorough inspection. Many of them are literally what we would call a drive-by. Appraiser goes out, takes exterior pictures and says, yeah, the house is still standing. Doesn't appear to be any damage. They're not underwater. There's no water lines. There's nothing that would indicate that they were in a flood area. But if you were, we certainly have plenty of horror stories about deals in process that flooded out. And I'll tell you what, they're not closing.
They're dead.
They're in deep trouble. I mean, the seller's in deep trouble because they probably weren't covered. We talked about that 2 weeks ago about, does your homeowner's insurance cover your flood damage? Which, no, in general, it does not unless you have specific flood coverage. So those people are in deep doo-doo. They've got a home that they cannot sell.
So are these re-inspects only on government-insured loans?
Nope. They're happening on all loans. In right now, we've got Adams County
Jefferson.
Jefferson was just added to the list last Thursday. Late,
which is crazy because that's a big county.
It's a huge county.
And there's a lot of places that are not affected. But just because you're in the county, you have to do this.
That's right. I closed a deal on Friday. I literally got this FEMA notification on Thursday late in the day for a close on a property. Saying Jefferson County was affected, that everything in that county is going to have to be re-inspected. My appraisal was done prior to 9/11. We were closing on Friday, and I was scrambling to get that home re-inspected so we could close.
Could you do it that fast?
We got that one done.
Good job.
So, it's going to affect a lot. That, in addition, is affecting a lot of transactions. And it's another thing that I'd recommend, maybe if you were in an affected area or close by, I know that's a once in 100 years or 200 years that they say that magnitude of rain's going to happen, but maybe that flood policy is worth investing in.
Yeah, but so bottom line, if you're in the process of doing a refi or a purchase, you're going to have to get that done if it was the appraisal was done prior to 9/11.
Yeah, 9/11 is kind of the date drawn in the sand. So if your appraisal was after that, you're fine. But if you're under contract on a home that was affected by the flood, you're probably looking for a new property at this point.
We have a lot going on, don't we?
We do. Also check your home, because I have heard that with the shifting of the rivers and different things from the flooding, those flood zones are changing.
I guarantee you they're going to reassess flood zones. No doubt about it. I don't know how long that process is going to take. Right. It's government, so the rest of our lifetime, I don't know.
That's a great question. So would the servicer of that loan then contact people and say,
yes,
you need to have flood insurance?
Yes. Every mortgage real estate note, deed of trust has that verbiage in it that if you in the future are deemed to be in a flood zone, you will be required to acquire flood insurance.
And the way that we would know that, though, is our lender would contact us.
They're going to contact it.
It's mandated.
As those flood zones change, they will figure that out. And it'll take some time. This is not going to happen next week. I don't know who makes the decisions on flood areas, but that process is probably a year. And I'm just drawing that out of my head, but it is not going to happen next week. But yeah, if you were in some of these areas that were flooded out, do not be surprised if you get a letter, a year from now, 6 months from now, whenever that is, saying, guess what? You need flood insurance.
Yeah, and don't throw it away.
Or even if you weren't in an area that was affected, it wouldn't surprise me that we're going to see a lot more areas in flood zones that weren't. In my experience in 12 years in the mortgage industry, I've had 2 properties in 12 years that that customers have had to acquire flood insurance. So it's pretty rare.
Yeah, but just another reason, go to the expert.
Go to the expert, 720-515-1818. Give us a call. You can text me. You can send me a voice message. Gosh, that was complicated. I'd love to put you together with Allie Kronberg as well, 720-515-1818. Tom Gysin, you've got to step out. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you maybe next week.
You got it. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. And we're going to continue on. We've got Allie Kronberg with Fuller Sotheby's International Realty here. She's a real estate agent and also has her CPA credentials, so she's a fantastic resource for you. Allie, let's go back to just kind of that question of, have I missed my real estate buying opportunity? Because that market is so changed.
Yeah, great question. No, you've not missed your opportunity at all. I mean, if anything, I think it's great. We were talking about this in the last segment. It's a great opportunity. It's a great time to get in there and do it. Prices are stabilizing.
Right.
The competition is down from where it was in the springtime. inventory levels are coming back up.
So there's a little more choice in the marketplace.
There's some choice. You know, I mean, that was the thing. In the spring, prices were soaring because people had such limited options. You know, they would take the best thing they could find. That's why those cream puffs, so to speak, those little golden nuggets would, you know, fly off the market in just a couple of hours because everybody is looking for the same great house.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right now you've got a few more options. I think it's a great time. Interest rates are still low. I mean,
rates are settled down a little bit over the last several weeks.
Right. They came up a little, you know, from where they were in the spring. But come on. I mean, we're talking 4.5% rates. These are still phenomenal rates. Yeah.
The whole rate discussion I just find hilarious that people were pulling out of the market because the rates are too high. And I will clearly say that I had a couple of customers that affected what they could buy.
Sure.
You know, maybe they went from qualifying for $250,000 to $230,000 or $240,000.
Sure.
You know, so it's certainly, if you're buying at the top of your credit limit, that rate at 4%, you can't buy as much as you could at 3.5%.
That's right.
There's no question.
And I think the other thing is, you know, the buyers, especially the buyers that were looking when the rates changed, you know, they're out there looking at a house for, you know, whatever the price point is. You said $250,000, and now they're being told to look at one for $230,000. Well, you know, there's a difference in what you get for $230,000 to $250,000, and when they already were looking at the $250,000, now the $230,000 might not satisfy. But you know, whatever your price point is.
But if you're a well-qualified buyer,
absolutely,
and don't hold me to this. I mean, you're talking a very minimal change to your monthly payment, going even a half a point in rate change.
Absolutely.
At $200,000 or $300,000. I mean, you're not talking a $100 a month change at all.
That's right. That's right. And at the higher dollars, I mean, you know,
it's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's just nothing. It's picking nits. So I don't accept that rate change as a valid argument. Rates are still at what I would call 40, 50-year lows.
Which is why I think it's such a great time to buy.
Yes.
Because they are. The rates are still phenomenal. You know, and now having more selection and, you know, and not having the stress of that competition. I think that stress weighed on buyers. I mean, it was tough. It was tough on sellers, too.
Well, and I would tell you, you know, the other trick that we like for our first-time home buyers at Citywide Home Loans, we do a lot of these. It's called a mortgage credit certificate that creates a pretty fantastic direct tax reduction for first-time home buyers, which essentially reduces their effective rate by a significant amount. So that's one of the things that we really try to do for all our buyers with Citywide Home Loans. So again, take the whole rate issue out of the picture.
Absolutely.
You know, and then you throw in, like you say, less activity in the market. You know, people have slowed down a little bit. I think it's just a great time to jump in. The other thing that we had on our list that I'll throw in is January 1st, there is a big piece of legislation going into effect that was part of the Dodd-Frank Act that passed a year and a half ago, quite a while ago, and they're finally implementing the final pieces of it, which could have a significant impact to your ability to qualify after the first of the year, particularly customers that are, again, first-time home buyers often, but many people use government loans, FHA, you know, whatnot. And the way those legislation reads right now, the debt ratio used, and I don't want to get too complicated here, but the debt ratio that is acceptable today is going to be reduced significantly, potentially coming January 1. So again, you may not qualify for that same house after the first of the year that you qualify for today.
That's right.
The market is continuing to increase in values somewhat.
Absolutely.
And I don't know where rates will be after the first of the year. They're more likely to be higher than they are lower. So you factor all those things in, Allie, wouldn't you agree?
I definitely do. With all the question marks after the first of the year, I mean, it's just the beginning of October. We've got 3 months. Let's get out there and get you home. Let's go.
Now is as good a time as ever.
It is, absolutely.
And, you know, I think Denver, and we can talk, we only have a minute left, but we can throw in a comment here about, does Denver slow down significantly? I don't think so.
Denver doesn't slow significantly. There's certainly some seasonality to it.
A little bit, but I think because of the
not like other parts of the
crazy scramble we had earlier in the year, I think we stay even throughout this winter season.
We do, and we have such temperate and mild winters compared to other parts of the country and people, moving into the city, the metropolis that we have. So, we don't slow down in the same way that other areas do.
Absolutely. Well, we've had a fantastic time with you today, Allie. Thank you so much for coming in. Allie Kronberg with Fuller Sotheby's International Realty. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And we'll have to do this again. And again, I want to give you the show number 720-515-1818, 720-515-1818. Let me put you together with Allie. We'll see you next week.